Hi, Deidre here from Our Upcycled Life, and today we are upcycling 2 pieces of scrap wood that I found in the burn pile, dragged them home, and turned them into gorgeous signs. You don't want to miss this one because the transformations are unbelievable. Okay, let's get started. I stumbled upon a discarded piece of wood in the burn pile which had already had a coat of red paint. Rather than letting it go to waste, I decided to repurpose it into a sign. To achieve an aged and rustic appearance, I applied my own homemade white chalk paint on top of the existing red. Afterwards, I took some coarse sandpaper, some 80 grit, and carefully sanded the edges, intentionally distressing them to give it a weathered and worn look. I have a knack for finding beauty in any scrap piece of wood. With just a sprinkle of creativity, I can easily transform it into something stunning, and it only takes a dash of imagination to turn ordinary into extraordinary. I took my paintbrush and applied acrylic paint to the wood by flinging, creating a stippled and splattered effect. I used some red and I used some blue, and then I set it aside and let it dry. As many of you know, I love using Mod Podge and reverse graphics in my projects. For this scrap piece, I'm going to be using my Mod Podge mat. I've printed my graphics on my LaserJet printer, making sure that the text is reversed before applying it to the sign. You can find this graphic in my Etsy store. I'll provide the link down below in the description, and it's a fantastic choice for celebrating the 4th of July. I resized this in Google Docs, allowing it for a larger design, more than a standard piece of paper. I've also created an easy tutorial on how to do this, and I'll put that down below in the description too, and it allows you to make bigger signs. You can try this technique with an inkjet printer too, so you're not restricted to a laser printer. I actually have a video demonstrating how it turns out when you use an inkjet printer. That'll be down in the description also. I opted for the cheapest computer paper available whenever I'm doing this technique because it means you don't have to rub off as much paper compared to using a thicker paper. After letting the sign dry for 24 hours, I gently rub off the graphics by lightly dampening a sponge with water. As I did this, the letters start to appear through the paper, and with a little bit of rubbing and a little bit of patience, the paper will all come off, leaving a beautiful graphic on your scrap piece of wood. I'm always asking my friends to save small bits and pieces of scrap wood for me because I can transform them into anything, charming shelf sitters, signs, or any other DIY projects. So spread the word that you're looking for scrap wood and you'll be surprised what you might get. To make my sign more vibrant, I used a simple method. I grabbed some of my acrylic paint and I painted over the graphic. This instantly adds a burst of color, making the sign look even better. If you have a laser printer with colored ink, you can skip this step. However, since my LaserJet only has black ink, I like to enhance my signs with acrylic paint. I brush on the paint and gently dab it with a tissue, and this is how it turned out. Just imagine how many people would have overlooked this ugly scrap piece of wood and left it in the burn pile, but wait until you see this amazing transformation it undergoes. The first step is to give it a distressed appearance using some candle wax. I took this pillar candle that I picked up at the dollar store and I rubbed it all over the piece of wood. Next, I applied some black chalk paint on top and I let it dry completely. Now it's time to add a touch of Vaseline. I want to achieve a really beautiful, distressed, and unique piece of wood, so I'm going to be using a few techniques. I'm applying Vaseline to the areas where the wood would have naturally aged, focusing around the edges, and then I'm going to add another layer of candle wax on top of that. This is going to prevent the paint from sticking, allowing us to scrape it off later and reveal those underlying colors. I have this really pretty light sage green acrylic paint, and I'm going to cover the entire piece, extending it right out to the edges, covering all of that candle wax and the Vaseline. After letting the first coat dry, I applied a second coat of paint and allowed it to dry completely. And then I added more candle wax. When I'm aiming for that distressed look, you can never go wrong with using plenty of candle wax. It creates that beautiful chipped age appearance. Just remember to use a white candle instead of a colored one, as the color might transfer onto your project. I'm now applying a lighter yellow color on top of the previous layer, making sure to cover right to the edges. Before the paint dries, I brought out some pickling salt. You can use any type of salt. The more coarse, the more texture and chippy look you're going to get. I sprinkled that salt into that wet acrylic paint, and then I set it aside and I let it dry completely. You won't believe the amazing transformation of this scrap piece of wood that was destined for the burn pile. Once it was fully dry, I took a scraper and I started scraping off the salt, that candle wax, revealing that distressed effect created by the Vaseline. It has a really truly authentic appearance as I combine those three different techniques to achieve this result. Now I'm going to give the edges a finishing touch by sanding them with my 80 grit sandpaper using my palm sander. Finally, it's time to turn into a sign. I have this wonderful graphic that I designed that I'm going to be using for this project, which you can find in my Etsy store. It's perfect for adding a touch of charm to your garden or porch or even your kitchen. I've resized it slightly larger than a standard piece of paper using Google Docs, ensuring a proper fit. After printing it out, I applied some Mod Podge to the paper, making sure that I'd reverse the text, and I carefully placed that graphic, smoothing out any bubbles and wrinkles, set it aside, and let it dry for 24 hours. If you haven't tried this technique, you should definitely give it a go. It's incredibly easy, and the best part is you don't need a Cricut or stencils. With this technique, you're going to achieve a professional looking sign once you're done, and these sell fantastic. After letting it sit for 24 hours, I'm using a sponge, or you can also use a damp rag with a little bit of water to gently dampen the paper until the graphics begin to show through, and then you're going to rub off all of the paper. To add a vibrant touch to the sign, I'm using my acrylic paints again. I'll use green for the leaves and some pastel colors for the flowers. Once it's completely dry, I'm going to seal it up with a polyacrylic sealer, and I have created from an ugly scrap piece of wood that was destined for the burn pile into a stunning sign that's perfect to enhance your home decor. Go ahead and start exploring your wood pile or ask your friends to save some scraps for you. Give these sign making techniques a try and see what you can create. Let me know down in the comments which was your favorite sign in this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. And if you love this video, I'm sure you're going to love either of these next two. Take care.